All right, I'm going to start with a story for you guys, and then tell you, well, then you're going to find out why I told the story. Here's some pictures. All right, there was Martin Gansberg wrote an article for the New York Times called The Killing of Kitty Genovese. This is Kitty. It starts, well, really, she's called Kitty by her neighbors, and one night, she was going over to her apartment late at night. She was attacked. A guy stabbed her twice in the back. And as this was happening, she yelled out and cried out for help and said, somebody's stabbing me, like help. And a few of the neighbors, this is her neighborhood, heard her and came to the window, saw one guy even open his window and yelled out like, hey, get off her, or whatever. The guy that stabbed her left, and then he came back 10 minutes later and found her again. This is like the first spot that he stabbed her in. You can see there's like two little arrows there in the second spot. He found her still alone, half conscious on the ground, and she couldn't get in her door because it was locked. And he proceeded to stab her again. And she yelled out again, and more people came to the windows, and some people saw her, and some people heard her. And actually there was 12 people in all that either heard or saw part or whole of what happened to her, but one by one, each of them decided that they would do nothing about it. They were not evil people, they were not bad people, they were just like us, but the reason is, they chose, they thought that somebody else would do something about it, or that they just didn't want to get involved. And half an hour later, Kitty Genovese was murdered and raped. I tell you that, I'm going to actually talk to you guys about inhospitality in our culture, in our society. It's what I call inhospitality. And after studying this, I've studied this and the subject and experienced it in our culture, and I want to talk to you guys about the problem of inhospitality and talk to you about the fact that it comes from individualism, a value for individualism, and then just persuade you and persuade me, really, to live out community the way that God has prescribed us to. So the first thing is inhospitality. Really, we see that everywhere. I mean, people, that you can live a door away from somebody you don't even know the name of for years, and even then, much less know who they are or what they're going through. And this is the same actual experience in our churches. I was wondering, I've wondered why everyone is so shocked when my friend, that I've talked to and that I've laughed with and had theological conversations with commits suicide. He suddenly commits suicide, and everyone is shocked about that. And why did that happen? And, well, he didn't have any community. He was living alone. And this is biblically wrong. The root of our inhospitality, this is the second point, is our cultural love and value for individualism. Individualism seems to be like the glue that holds us all together in an ironic way. It started a long time ago, though, with the Greeks. Cornelia J. D. Vogel talks about how individualism was cultivated in the Epicurean philosophies, time of Plato, the Greek philosophers. And we see it today everywhere. I mean, in movies, everything from How to Train Your Dragon to the Bourne movies. I mean, it's all the same line. I guess you see one person, one main character that goes against the flow, goes against society, everybody, and pulls himself up by his own bootstraps and is victorious. And we look at that, we see that kind of movie, and we think, awesome. That was sweet. That was cool. Individualism is deeply ingrained into our lives. Throw these away. But it's interesting that we value individualism, but we crave community. There's Professor Graves in his presentation, Redemptive Communication. He says there are other theorists who have argued that our driving force is the drive to belong to a group. We have this desperate need within us to belong to a group, to have the longing that is associated with that, and that is therefore what drives us. And I'm going to submit to you guys that this craving for community, this is a craving we ought to indulge in, but not superficially. I don't mean joining sports teams and work parties and bars and even Sunday, coming to church on Sunday. Those are all good things, but those are superficial communities that allow us to live alone. I mean, I guess I just encourage you guys and want to persuade us to stop valuing individualism, to stop throwing in high honor the ideal of pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and do it yourself, because that is not honorable and that is not valuable. It's a lie. And really to start living out the community that God has prescribed for us. In Philippians 2:2, he says, he talks about how a unity that is of love and of spirit and of mind, and that is only possible if we spend time together. And we need to obey Hebrews 10:25 when it talks about meeting together constantly and encouraging one another. And that is only possible if we're going to be intentional about asking each other questions. And what are you going through? What is happening? Or what are you struggling with? And we need to obey James 5:16 when he talks about being accountable with one another. I mean, that means I have to be open about what I'm going through and struggling with before somebody asks me. This is community. When I spent 4 years at a Bible Institute, and I saw this principle at work each year. People would come in and they would start growing, and it's like grow like a weed, They would just get so excited and passionate about the gospel. And it's interesting, when I talked to them and asked them, they were, at this time, these people were like going through Bible classes every day, just getting so much of the word poured into them. But if I asked them, what is the main reason for your growth? Almost every single time, the answer had nothing to do with the Bible teaching. I mean, that was a part, admittedly. But the main reason for their growth was the community that they had. They had accountability, and they started growing with other believers. They stopped valuing individualism, and they started living community the way that God prescribed. And my encouragement is to do the same.